Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. I'm really happy to return to the quo material, but we're going to do something a little different today. You know, it's amazing when you read these channeled works, you come upon these amazing paragraphs and even sentences that are just so inspirational, that are just mind twisters, and they just blow your mind. There's so many different channeled works compiled by Quo, which is really the name for a conglomeration of different channeled sources. If you have heard of the Law of One, check out my previous episodes which explain what the Law of One is. It's a set of channeled works that came out between 1981 and 1984 by three people through an entity called Ra. And the interesting story is that the person it was channeling was being attacked by other entities. They were trying to stop this channeling from happening because it was so powerful, and they knew it could have a dramatic effect on the planet if this channeled information came out. So they attacked her. And I guess after the channeling was finished over the 3 years, Ra was horrified by the fact that they had attacked Carla and almost killed her. And they had started to protect her. And a lot of the channeling sessions later on are questions about Carla's health and things that had been happening that she had been going through. And I even got a chance to talk to Jim Mccarty about this. I found it very interesting. He explained the ways they tried to protect her. So what they did is they created Quo, which is a less direct way of channeling. So she is not completely out. The difference in the raw material is that Carla is completely out. And she's speaking, they're using her body and speaking the words, she's not there, she doesn't remember any of it. These channeled settings are a little bit different, and they include Ra as well as other channeled sources. Hatan, there is Latui, and a variety of other ones. And so they all have these amazing passages in it. And so I wanted to read some of them and share them with you, including some of the best from Ra. And all together, it's Quo. And you'll just hopefully come away inspired, the better understanding or knowledge of the Law of One through these metaphors and ideas that they're discussing. You can go all the way back to 1974 when they started channeling Hatan. Hatan says, he does not understand the true meaning of the simple and beautiful life that surrounds him. He does not appreciate its generation and regeneration. He learned that the very atmosphere that he breathes is cycled through the plant life to be regenerated to support him and his fellow beings and creatures. And yet this seems to the vast majority of those who dwell upon this planet to be an exercise in technology rather than one in theology. Even if the universe for those around you remains disharmonious and difficult, if your mind is stayed upon the unity of the Creator, your own universe will become harmonious. And this is not by your doing, but by the simple love of the Creator. If it seems to you, my friends, that your entire incarnation within this illusion has been a series of difficulties of one particular type, then you are almost certainly aware in some manner of one of your lessons. As you can see, these lessons are not to be avoided, they are to be learned. And in a final passage, Hatan says, I cannot overemphasize the necessity of becoming able to understand the nature of the potentials within your illusion, and then by self-analysis and meditation, reacting to that in a way that will express the thought that generated us, the thought of our Creator. This was done by the teacher whom you know as Jesus. This entity recognized his position. He recognized the illusion. He understood the reason for the potentials within the illusion, and his reaction to these potentials and activities within the illusion was a reaction which was expressing the thought of our Creator, a thought of love. I've gathered some different favorites from Quo here, and as we read, I'll try to give you the dates where I found them. To be a self is intrinsically no more burdensome than to be a feather borne on the wind, a leaf in the forest, a song in the air. Quo, February 5th, 2011. Ideally, those concepts which you follow will be those concepts which, when first read or heard, awaken within a seeker a kind of recollection, as though he already knew that but was happy to be reminded of it once again. Quo, March 22nd, 2008. And so many friends, we suggest that you toss concern about your own sincerity to the wind and sing the songs of joy that are in your heart at this moment, or turn your face to the wind and moan and cry if that be your lot. Quo, April 20th, 1986. We are most happy to be with any of you if you will ask for us mentally as you go into meditation. Quo, January 9th, 2006. Lighten up and find the light touch, the laughter, the bliss, and the joy that are only available when you are focusing on the present moment. Quo, January 9th, 2006. We realize that this experience of the third density illusion is one which is most confusing to many of your peoples, for it works so well, does it not, my friends, to hide the one creator where one would not think of looking, into the eyes of a friend, a stranger, a situation which seems most out of harmony. Quo, October 2nd, 1994. Separation seems to run very deep, and one forgets that the stones sing, that the earth shouts with rejoicing, and that the trees skip in the springtime. How easy is it to feel oneself separate from the life that indwells all things? How easy is it to feel separated from oneself, to feel that there are factions within the self which must be reconciled, to find oneself analyzing and reanalyzing to no avail. The only road from separation into unity is keyed with meditation. Oxal, March 16th, 1986. How do you get from your conscious mind to this extremely deep realization that allows a safe and peaceful surrender of the self? A trusting surrender, a safe surrender. It is the faith that comes from persistent daily attempts at meditation. No judgment of the meditations, no taking the spiritual temperature, but looking always for ways to see the Creator, for ways to recognize the hunger and the thirst for that which the Creator can give only to those who have surrendered to their higher selves. Quo, August 5th, 1990. It is as though within the meditation, regardless of how scattered it seems, there is a pure and distilled waterfall of light, which irrigates and illumines cell by cell the body, mind, and spirit. It is like being rinsed and polished to relax into that presence, which is holy. Quo, January 16th, 1994. The one most powerful method of enhancing the process of evolution is meditation. Quo, May 20th, 2001. The second aid to increasing the ability to choose faith is meditation. You will note that we do not ever lose an opportunity to encourage seekers to prayer, meditation, praise, and thanksgiving. These powerful techniques of tuning the mind and the heart have a cumulative effect. The first time you choose to go into the silence or to have a conversation with the infinite Creator that is honest and deep and probing, it may not seem to have amounted to much. But if you persist, then moving into that silence again and again, that silence will expand and lighten and become the Holy of Holies in which you are sitting with the Creator. Indeed, the Creator sits already within your heart of hearts and waits for you to come and join Him. Quo, April 2nd, 2000. Faith is a matter of trusting that this experience is on the track that you intended it to be before you came. Quo, September 15th, 1996. Prayer, praise, and thanksgiving are three resources that add and strengthen the connection to faith. Quo, September 10th, 1995. May we say that the failure, prayer, praise, and thanksgiving are three resources that add and strengthen the connection to faith. Again, and must go through the pain of your own damnation. Yet always, the handle of the door to faith is ready to be turned. But you as a spirit must turn it. and must go through that door into self-forgiveness and awareness of infinite redemption and newness, a resting place for all eternity. Quo, September 10th, 1995. The classic, paralyzing Buddhist description of fear is a seeker hanging onto a rapidly decaying branch of a tree and the side of a cliff, with a tiger above and a tiger below and a chasm beneath. And the answer to that image is to let go of the branch, wave bye-bye to the tigers, and welcome the abyss. There is, in faith, that realization that in no way, shape, or form can we know in a linear sense that all is well, or that all will be well, and yet that is what we claim. That is what we believe, and on that we base our security and our confidence. Quo, October 21st, 2001. The most strengthening gift that you can cultivate in the regard of this most important and central service is the gift of persistence and the unflagging acceptance of any and all circumstances, because it is only an illusion that lies between you and that which is the truth. Quo, November 25th, 1990. There is much unseen support for work in consciousness, for prayers, and for a life lived in faith. We ask you to lean into that support. There is guidance. There is help, for the Creator is constantly communicating to you using everything: nature, the environment, other people, coincidences. Be alert, begin to see the spiritually interesting coincidences, and you shall be much encouraged thereby. Quo, May 24th, 1998. Allow the little seeds of faith to grow in your garden of thought. Invoke faith without knowing that it is reasonable to do so. Live as though you had perfect faith that your destiny will come to you and all that is for you will simply be attracted to you as it is time for it to appear. Live as though it were true, and notice these subjectively interesting hints and suspicions and suggestions and synchronicities that say to you, yes, you are on the right track. Quo, September 15th, 1996. All is well. That is the tolling of the bell of faith. Above all, let not your heart be troubled. This is under your conscious control if you choose to claim the mastery over the self. Work when you can towards that point of balance within which you are able to see clearly, not removing yourselves from the thick of things, but rather bringing into the thick of things that sacred aspect, that relationship with the Creator within. Quo, November 13th, 1994. The suffering, the ordeal of living is specifically designed to grab the attention of the intellectual mind and then proceed to baffle it so thoroughly and completely that the intellectual mind gives up and the thrust of inquiry moves to the heart. In the heart lies that beingness which gazes at this experience of third density illusion and chooses in faith alone to be part of the love, the good, if you will, of the personal, societal, planetary mind. Quo, May 3rd, 1992. The one who fears and worries will grow closer and closer to the difficulty that is being perceived within. The person who is not fearing does not hold onto the circumstance or piece of thought or programming which is or is not causing fear. Can you see how the tendency to focus on a problem simply moves you closer and closer to a surety that there is indeed a problem? The faith and will grow smaller, and the problem or difficulty grows larger. The seeker ends up feeling helpless and discontent. The fearless entity moves along and turns the attention to each thing before accepting it. Quo, November 15th, 1992. Simply live by faith is to bring an end to paradox and confusion. For faith, all things are acceptable. All experiences are those of love and the distortions of love. Quo, March 23rd, 1997. Keep your feet in that fine river of forgiveness, and your light shall shine, as it will, and that which it is given to you to do will come before you with no effort whatsoever on your part. And whatever it is, the sweeping of a floor, the saving of a nation, all is equal. It is done in utter and complete love for the Creator, the Self, the situation, and any other entities that may be involved. Quo, June 23rd, 1990. Lessons learned revolve completely around love, not around wisdom, but around love. Quo, May 13th, 1993. Forgive, and forgive again. Forgive yourself. Forgive any who seem to have hurt you. Remember that you have faulty perceptions if you do not see love in every situation. Quo, November 16th, 1986. The ability to love without condition or desire of return is the beginning of the Creator within the self to recognize itself within all other portions of the creation. Quo, November 16th, 1986. Can you see that it is only fear that drives the desire for perfection and not love? Quo, November 22nd, 1996. Each has a destiny. Each has a mission. Each has come into incarnation with gifts to share, with a mission to fulfill, a service to do, and with learning to accomplish. The learning is always about love. The serving is always about trusting in the rightness of the moment. Quo, March 21st, 1999. For within the third density experience, as you know it, my friends, the basic lesson is that which is described by the word you know as love. That which is quite difficult to define, but which includes the ability to accept more of the creation without condition, and to see it as the self, and to see it as one thing, even though many portions of it present the illusion of separation, difference, and disharmony. Quo, August 31st, 1986. It's fun to move to the Law of One material and Ra, who is part of Quo. And there's some just classics in this one as well. From the first session, Ra says, "We spoke to one who heard and understood, and was in a position to decree the Law of One. However, the priests and peoples of that era quickly distorted our message, robbing it of the, shall we say, compassion with which unity is informed by its very nature. Since it contains all, it cannot abhor any. In truth, there is no right or wrong. There is no polarity, for all will be, as you would say, reconciled at some point in your dance through the mind-body-spirit complex, which you amuse yourself by distorting in various ways at this time. This distortion is not in any case necessary. It is chosen by each of you as an alternative to understanding the complete unity of thought which binds all things. You are not speaking of similar or somewhat like entities or things. You are everything, every being, every emotion, every event, every situation. You are unity. You are infinity. You are love, light, light, love. You are. This is the Law of One. Ra 1.6. Consider, if you will, the path your life experience complex has taken. Consider the coincidences and odd circumstances by which one thing flowed to the next. Consider this well. Ra, Session 8. The vibratory distortion of sound faith is perhaps one of the stumbling blocks between those of what we may call the infinite path and those of the finite proving understanding. You are precisely correct in your understanding of the congruency of faith and intelligent infinity. However, one is a spiritual term, the other more acceptable perhaps to the conceptual framework distortions of those who seek with measure and pen. Ra, third session. The Law of One, though beyond the limitations of name, as you call vibratory sound complexes, may be approximated by stating that all things are one, that there is no polarity, no right or wrong, no disharmony, but only identity. All is one, and that one is love, light, light, love, the infinite creator. One of the primal distortions of the Law of One is that of healing. Healing occurs when a mind-body-spirit complex realizes deep within itself the Law of One. That is, that there is no disharmony, no imperfection, that all is complete and whole and perfect. Thus, the intelligent infinity within this mind-body-spirit complex reforms the illusion of body, mind, or spirit to a form congruent with the law of one. The healer acts as energizer or catalyst for this completely individual process. Ra 4.20. The prerequisite of mental work is the ability to retain silence of self at a steady state when required by the self. The mind must be opened like a door. The key is silence. Ra 5.2. The dissolution into nothingness is the dissolution into unity, for there is no nothingness. Ra 6.7. The higher density beings' purposes are very simple: to allow those entities of your planet to become aware of infinity, which is often best expressed to the uninformed as the mysterious or unknown. Ra 6.25. The mystery and unknown quality of the occurrences we are allowed to offer have the hoped-for intention of making your peoples aware of infinite possibility. When your peoples grasp infinity, then and only then can the gateway be opened to the law of one. Ra 7.12. The law of one blinks neither as the light nor the darkness, but is available for service to others and service to self. Ra 7.15. Each entity will receive the opportunity that each needs. This information source beingness does not have uses in the life experience complex of each of those among your peoples who seek. Thus, the advertisement is general and not designed to indicate the searching out of any particular material, but only to suggest the noumental aspect of the illusion. Ra 8.1. The law of one has, as one of its primal distortions, the free will distortion. Thus, each entity is free to accept, reject, or ignore the mind-body-spirit complexes about it, and ignore the creation itself. There are many among your social memory complex distortion who, at this time, space, engage daily, as you would put it, in the working upon the law of one in one of its primal distortions, that is, the ways of love. However, if this same entity, being biased from the depths of its mind-body-spirit complex towards love-light, were then to accept the responsibility for each moment of the time-space accumulation of present moments available to it, such an entity can empower its progress. Ra 10.12. The 4 exercises to connect to the law of one. Exercise 1. This is the most nearly centered and usable within your illusion complex. The moment contains love. That is the lesson/goal of this illusion or density. The exercise is to consciously see that love in awareness and understanding distortions. The first attempt is the cornerstone. Upon this choosing rests the remainder of the life experience of an entity. The second seeking of love within the moment begins the addition. The third seeking empowers the second. The fourth powering or doubling the third. As with the previous type of empowerment, there will be some loss of power due to flaws within the seeking in the distortion of insincerity. However, the conscious statement of self to self, of the desire to seek love, is so central an act of will that, as before, the loss of power due to this friction is inconsequential. Exercise 2. The universe is one being. When a mind-body-spirit complex views another mind-body-spirit complex, see the Creator. This is a helpful exercise. Exercise 3. Gaze within a mirror. See the Creator. Exercise 4. Gaze at the creation which lies about the mind-body-spirit complex of each entity. See the Creator. The foundation or prerequisite of these exercises is a predilection towards what may be called meditation, contemplation, or prayer. With this attitude, these exercises can be processed. Without it, the data will not sink down into the roots of the tree of the mind, thus enabling and ennobling the body and touching the spirit. Ra 10.14. An entity which acts in a consciously unloving manner in action with other beings can become karmically involved. Ra 12.29. It shall be understood that any portion, no matter how small, of any density or illusory pattern contains, as in a holographic picture, the one creator, which is infinity. Thus all begins and ends in mystery. Ra 13.13. The harvest is now. There is not at this time any reason to include efforts along these distortions toward longevity, but rather to encourage distortions toward seeking the heart of self. For this which resides clearly in the violet ray energy field will determine the harvesting of each mind-body-spirit complex. Ra 14.14. There is but one service. The law is one. The offering of self to Creator is the greatest service, the unity, the fountainhead. The entity who seeks the one Creator is with infinite intelligence. From this seeking, from this offering, a great multiplicity of opportunities will evolve, depending upon the mind-body-spirit complexes, distortions with regards to the various illusory aspects or energy centers of the various complexes of your illusion. Thus, some become healers, some workers, some teachers, and so forth. Ra 15.7. There is one energy. It may be understood as love light or light love or intelligent energy. Ra 15.9. It is important to allow each seeker to enlighten itself rather than for any messenger to attempt in language to teach learn for the entity, thus being teach/learner and learn/teacher. Ra 15.13. The material for your understanding is the self, the mind-body-spirit complex. You have been given information upon healing, as you call this distortion. This information may be seen in a more general context as ways to understand the self. The understanding, experiencing, accepting, and merging of self with self and other self, and finally with the Creator, is the path to the heart of self. In each infinitesimal part of yourself resides the one in all of its power. Therefore, we can only encourage these lines of contemplation or prayer as a means of objectively using or combining various understandings to enhance the seeking process. Without such a method of reversing the analytical processes, one could not integrate into unity the many understandings gained in such seeking. Ra 15.14. The purpose of the Orion group, as mentioned before, is conquest and enslavement. This is done by finding and establishing an elite and causing others to serve the elite through various devices such as the laws you mentioned and others given by this entity. Ra 16.15. Question: I'm assuming that it is not necessary for an individual to understand the law of one to go from third to fourth density. Is this correct? It is absolutely necessary that an entity consciously realize it does not understand in order for it to be harvestable. Understanding is not of this density. Ra 16.37. We ask you to consider, as we speak, that there are not words for positively describing fourth density. We can only explain what is not and approximately what is. Beyond fourth density, our ability grows more limited until we become without words. That which fourth density is not. It is not of words unless chosen. It is not of heavy chemical vehicles for body complex activities. It is not of disharmony within self. It is not of disharmony within peoples. It is not within limits of possibility to cause disharmony in any way. Approximations of positive statements. It is a plane of type of bipedal vehicle which is much denser and more full of life. It is a plane wherein one is aware of thought of other selves. It is a plane wherein one is aware of vibrations of other selves. It is a plane of compassion and understanding of the sorrows of third density. It is a plane striving towards wisdom or light. It is a plane wherein individual differences are pronounced although automatically harmonized by group consensus. It is impossible to help another being directly. It is only possible to make catalyst available in whatever form, the most important being the radiation of realization of oneness with the Creator from the self, less important being information such as we share with you. We, ourselves, do not feel an urgency for this information to be widely disseminated. It is enough that we have made it available to 3, 4, or 5. This is extremely ample reward, for if one of these obtains fourth density understanding due to this catalyst, then we shall have fulfilled the law of one in the distortion of service. We encourage a dispassionate attempt to share information without concern for numbers or quick growth among others. That you attempt to make this information available is, in your terms, your service. The attempt, if it reaches one, reaches all. We cannot offer shortcuts to enlightenment. Enlightenment is, of the moment, an opening to intelligent infinity. It can only be accomplished by the self for the self. Another self cannot teach/learn enlightenment, but only teach/learn information, inspiration, or a sharing of love, of mystery, of the unknown that makes the other self reach out and begin the seeking process that ends in a moment. But who can know when an entity will open the gate to the present? Raw 17.2. True healing is simply the radiance of the self causing an environment in which a catalyst may occur, which initiates the recognition of self by self of the self, healing properties of the self. Raw 17.18. The best way of service to others is the constant attempt to seek and to share the love of the Creator as it is known to the inner self. This involves self-knowledge and the ability to open the self to the other self without hesitation. This involves, shall we say, radiating that which is the essence or the heart of the mind-body-spirit complex. Speaking to the intention of your question, the best way for each seeker in third density to be of service to others is unique to that mind-body-spirit complex. This means that the mind-body-spirit complex must then seek within itself the intelligence of its own discernment as to the way it may best serve other selves. This will be different for each. There is no best. There is no generalization. Nothing is known. Raw 17.30. It is not our intent in this particular project to create erroneous information, but to express, in the confining ambiance of your language system, the feeling of the infinite mystery of the one creation in its infinite and intelligent unity. Raw 18.1. In another, they ask a question. Much of the mystic tradition of seeking on earth holds the belief that the individual self must be erased or obliterated and the material world ignored for the individual to reach nirvana, as it is called, or enlightenment, which is the proper role of the individual self and its worldly activities to aid an individual to grow more into the law of one. The proper role of the entity is in this density to experience all things desired, to then analyze, understand, and accept these experiences, distilling them, the love light within them. Nothing shall be overcome. That which is not needed falls away. The orientation develops due to analysis of desire. These desires become more and more distorted towards conscious application of love/light as the entity furnishes itself with distilled experience. We have found it to be inappropriate in the extreme to encourage the overcoming of any desires, except to suggest the imagination rather than the carrying out in the physical plane, as you call it, of those desires not consonant with the law of one, thus preserving the primal distortion of free will. The reason it is unwise to overcome is that overcoming is an unbalanced action, creating difficulties in balancing in the time-space continuum. Overcoming thus creates the further environment for holding on to that which apparently has been overcome. All things are acceptable in the proper time for each entity, and in experiencing, in understanding, in accepting, in then sharing with other selves, the appropriate distortion shall be moving away from distortions of one kind to distortions of another which may be more consonant with the law of one. It is, shall we say, a shortcut to simply ignore or overcome any desire. It must instead be understood and accepted. This takes patience and experience, which can be analyzed with care, with compassion for self and for other self. Raw 18.5. Thus, what would be an improper distortion with one entity is proper with another. We can suggest an attempt to become aware of the other self as a self, and thus do that action which is needed by other self understanding from the other self's intelligence and awareness. In many cases, this does not involve the breaking of the distortion of free will into a distortion of fragmentation called infringement. However, it is a delicate matter to be of service, and compassion, sensitivity, and an ability to empathize are helpful to avoiding the distortions of man-made intelligence and awareness, Ra 18.6. Forgiveness of other self is forgiveness of self. An understanding of this insists upon full forgiveness upon the conscious level of self and other self, for they are one. A full forgiveness is thus impossible without the inclusion of self, Ra 18.12. All serve the one Creator. There is nothing else to serve, for the Creator is all that there is. It is impossible not to serve the Creator. There are simply various distortions of this service, Ra 18.3. Thus, the weakening of the physical vehicle, as you call it, was designed to distort entities towards a predisposition to deal with each other. Thus, the lessons which approach a knowing of love can be begun. This catalyst then is shared between peoples as an important part of each self's development, as well as the experiences of the self in solitude and the synthesis of all experiences through meditation. The quickest way to learn is to deal with other selves. There is a much greater catalyst than dealing with the self. Dealing with the self without the other selves is akin to living without what you would call mirrors. Thus, the self cannot see the fruits of its beingness. Thus, each may aid each by reflection. This is also a primary reason for the weakening of the physical vehicle, as you call the physical complex, Ra 19.12. We can only speak in metaphor. Some love the light. Some love the darkness. It is a matter of the unique and infinitely various Creator choosing and playing among its experiences as a child upon a picnic. Some enjoy the picnic and find the sun beautiful, the food delicious, the games refreshing, and glow with the joy of creation. Some find the night delicious, their picnic being pain, difficulty, sufferings of others, and the examination of the perversities of nature. These enjoy a different picnic. All these experiences are available. It is the free will of each entity which chooses the form of play, the form of pleasure, Ra 19.16. The mind-body-spirit complex of third density has perhaps 100 times as intensive a program of catalytic action from which to distill distortions and learn/teachings than any other of the densities. Thus, the learn/teachings are most confusing to the mind-body-spirit complex, which is, shall we say, inundated by the ocean of experience, Ra 20.23. The original desire is that entities seek and become one. If entities can do this in a moment, they may go forward in a moment, and thus, were this to occur in a major cycle, indeed the third density planet would be vacated at the end of that cycle, Ra 22.6. There is only one law. That is the law of one. Other so-called laws are distortions of this law, some of them primal, and most important for progress to be understood. However, it is well that each so-called law, which we also call way, to be understood as a distortion rather than a law. There is simplicity to the law of one, Ra 22.27. We ask you to remember that we are of the brothers and sisters of sorrow. When one has been rescued from that sorrow to a vision of the one Creator, then there is no concept of failure. Secondly, the means of protecting against any negative or debilitating influence for those upon the positive path was demonstrated by this instrument to a very great degree. Consider, if you will, the potentials that this particular occurrence had for negative influences to enter the instrument. This instrument thought upon the Creator in its solitude and in actions with other self, continually praised and gave thanksgiving to the Creator for the experiences it was having. This in turn allowed this particular self such energies as became a catalyst for an opening and strengthening of the other self's ability to function in a more positively polarized state. Thus we see protection being very simple. Give thanksgiving for each moment. See the self and the other self as Creator. Open the heart. Always know the light and praise it. This is all the protection necessary. With the green ray transfer of energy, you now come to the great turning point, sexually as well as in each other mode of experience. The green ray then be turned outward, the entity then giving rather than receiving. The first giving beyond green ray is the giving of acceptance or freedom, thus allowing the recipient of blue ray energy transfer the opportunity for a feeling of being accepted, thus freeing the other self to express itself to the giver of this ray. It will be noted that once green ray energy transfer has been achieved by two mind-body spirits, in mating, the further rays are available without both entities having the necessity to progress equally. Thus, a blue ray vibrating entity or indigo ray vibrating entity whose other ray vibrations are clear may share that energy with the green ray other self, thus acting as catalyst for the continued learned teaching of the other self. Until an other self reaches green ray, such energy transfer through the rays is not possible. The entire creation is of the one creator. Thus, the division of sexual activity into simply that of the bodily complex is an artificial division, all things thusly being seen as sexually equal, the mind, the body, and the spirit, all of which are part of the polarity of the entity. Thus, fusion may be seen with or without what you may call sexual intercourse to be the complete melding of the mind, the body, and the spirit in what feels to be a constant orgasm, shall we say, of joy and delight, each in the other's beingness. Once the green ray has been achieved, the ability of the entity to enter blue ray is immediate and is only awaiting the efforts of the individual. The indigo ray is opened only through considerable discipline and practice, largely having to do with acceptance of self, not only as the polarized and balanced self, but as the creator, as an entity of infinite worth. This will begin to activate the indigo ray, Ra 32.14. The incarnating entity, which has become conscious of the incarnative process and thus programs its own experience, may choose the amount of catalyst, or to phrase this differently, the amount of lessons which it will undertake to experience and to learn from one incarnation. This does not mean that all is predestined, but rather that there are invisible guidelines shaping events which will function according to this programming. Thus, if one opportunity is missed, another will, until the, shall we say, student of the life experience grasps that a lesson is being offered and undertakes to learn it. Ra 33.6. I am Ra. We leave you in appreciation of the circumstances of the great illusion in which you now choose to play the pipe and timbrel and move in rhythm. We are also players upon a stage. The stage changes, the acts ring down, the lights come up again. And throughout the grand illusion and the following there is the undergirding majesty of the one infinite creator. All is well. Nothing is lost. Go forth, rejoicing in the love and the light, the peace and the power of the one infinite creator. I am Ra, Adonai. So that is a collection of Quo and Ra and Hatan and Oxal, who are all comprised of the Quo entity. We'll definitely go back to some longer readings, but some of these are just great, and I just had put these together and I wanted to share them in this format. I think it's better to understand what the questions are, but sometimes just these little bits and pieces can be super inspiring, and it's a different way to access this information. The thing that always attracts me to these channelings is its simplicity and the deep, heartfelt desire to be of service that I can feel coming through. The power of the words that are used, the inspiration and motivation that it provides me. I'd love to know how it works. I'm sure that you would too. Is it another being that's got some headset on in a spaceship above the planet, sending out thoughts, being channeled? What is the technology they're using? I don't know, but I am fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by what they're teaching. This idea that the law of one is this thing that they're bringing to us, which seems so simple, something that we have learned, but there's obviously a lot more to it. So I'd love to know what you thought of this particular episode, sort of a hodgepodge of different sessions, and perhaps listen to it like a meditation. In any case, I'm sending my love and light to all of you that can hear my voice right now, raising your vibration and thinking powerful thoughts about you and your future and hoping for the very best. Please put a like on this video. please let me know what you think in the comments. What was your favorite quote in this one? I'd love to know which one is your favorite in any case. Thank you, and welcome to the Reality Revolution.